sure you can imagine what would happen if one of your children's teachers, or coaches, or pastors, if you are in a reputable school system or worshiping community, gave even one child or teenager pornography. They would never work again in such a position of trust, and rightfully so. But the pornography issue goes farther than the psychological and emotional damage suffered by children exposed to it by perpetrators. It commonly plays a part in the process of grooming, by which perpetrators slowly break down children's resistance and create a situation in which they can rape or molest them without repercussions. The perpetrator begins by gaining the child's trust and interest, perhaps by giving them special treats, doing interesting things like magic tricks, or drawing them off into a private place. In Ellis Harsham's case, this reputedly included inviting boys from Carroll High School and various parishes where he served to see his 9-foot boa constrictor. Giving a child alcohol or drugs obviously reduces their ability to protest against inappropriate behavior, and giving them pornography and making sexualized comments violates their innocence and prepares them for the final step of physical molestation. It is hard to imagine how anyone entrusted with making a decision on such an important matter could hear multiple reports on of giving pornography combined with physical molestation, and hear an admission by the accused person of giving pornography to one of the children, and judge that now adult child's further allegation of physical molestation and all the other allegations of pornography and/or molestation to be not credible, especially when the Roman Catholic diocese involved had declared its finding that one of the allegations against a young child or teenager at most 15 years old to be not just credible but substantiated. And it is hard to imagine the scenario in the second paragraph about Mark Matson, in which anyone entrusted with enforcing an organization's zero-tolerance policy, upon learning of behavior which grossly violated it, could not direct the community and the presider involved to take the appropriate action by a real resignation from all pastoral duties and full disclosure to the communities involved, both of which have yet to occur. In the post-Mass conversation with the longtime Dignity Dayton member, he asserted that he was sure that Harsham had learned from his mistake and not perpetrated against anyone in his years as a priest at Dignity Dayton. I asked how he knew this, and he said he just knew, because he and others knew and trusted Ellis Harsham. After hearing this man's comfort with Harsham's giving pornography to a teenager and his belief that such behavior was not abusive, I asked, what if he gave pornography to my 14-year-old son? He asserted he wouldn't, and when I asked him how he knew that, he could find no answer. When I asked why he and others had not shared this information with me for my children's protection, when I began serving as a priest at the community and bringing my children to worship and social activities, he said, "It's not the kind of thing you talk about." Not in dysfunctional communities which endanger children, certainly. But it's exactly the kind of thing you talk about in healthy communities which take every possible measure to protect children and to protect perpetrators from the very likely situation of reoffense, and to help the many victims of clergy sexual abuse on the long and agonizing journey toward healing. As Jesus said in the 3rd chapter of John's Gospel, everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what has been done through God. This lack of concern for the safety of my children and others who attend worship and social events with their families at Dignity Dayton, as well as Christ Episcopal Church upstairs, is evident in Mark Matson's statement in the 3rd paragraph in the newspaper article, as well as the recent statement on the case by Dignity Dayton's board on its blog. That 3rd paragraph consists of just one damning sentence. Quote, Matson said, "Living Beatitudes is largely an adult community, with no daycare, teen counseling, or other access to children outside a Sunday service." Close quote. Largely an adult community. Not entirely an adult community, where no child ever ventures, just largely, where only a few children attend each week with their families, though many more attend the simultaneous worship and Christian education upstairs at Christ Episcopal Church. My question to Mark Matson is simple. How many children must be harmed before you consider their suffering worthy of consequences? And how many more must be at risk before you will take appropriate measures to protect them? 10? 20? 100? Why not 3 or 4? Why not 1? My own 8-year-old daughter summed up the situation perfectly in our heartbreaking conversation after that Palm Sunday Mass. One kid is too many. Why on earth would Matson point this out except to minimize the horrific risk taken by Dignity Dayton and Dignity USA in allowing someone who had admitted to giving a teenager pornography, which was also in the news articles linked, and had been accused of much worse, to serve in a position of trust and leadership and have free access to the children and teens of both Dignity Dayton and Christ Episcopal Church. Yes, I said free access, not no access, as Matson claimed in the most egregious outright lie in the article. The community does not have a daycare center or a teen counseling program, but it does meet in a basement that is a rabbit warren of rooms with a direct connection by both stairs and elevator to a first and second floor with multiple other rooms, where children and adults freely wander before and after the overlapping Sunday services of Dignity Dayton and Christ Episcopal Church. Dignity Dayton also has official community social events in private homes, like the annual Epiphany Party at the home of Father Dick Young and his partner Bob Butts. Ellis Harsham was present at this party, during which my children and the daughter of another couple who regularly attend wandered freely, since their parents mistakenly believed them to be safe in the embrace of a close and loving community. The final piece of today's story, which inspired the title, No Children Were Harmed, comes from Dignity Dayton's official statement about the case on their blog on Sunday, April 24th. I included the text in an earlier blog post, lest it disappear like last week's instruction to the community to stonewall the press, and it contains many statements worthy of analysis in a separate post, including a deceptive reference to, quote, a credible allegation, close quote, of misconduct, rather than the truth that there were multiple credible allegations and one substantiated one. But the sentence that both infuriates me and breaks my heart is the following: we are grateful for this wake-up call, especially because we believe it came without harm being done to any children in our community. I'm not surprised that people who knowingly endanger children for a decade choose to believe that the perpetrator involved did not abuse further children, teens, or young adults, like the many young gay men who commonly attended worship in Harsham's first years as a presider during that decade. I do not share their confidence in regards to long-term Dignity Dayton children or those vulnerable young gay men, especially after speaking to a local woman who contacted me after the April 20th article. She claimed sexual harassment by Harsham in the workplace in the last several years and is pursuing litigation. This is quite credible, regardless of his sexual orientation, because sexual abuse is about power and access more than the sex itself. But I do know that in my 7 months with the community, my own children, thank God, were not physically molested. However, I also know that they were terribly harmed by the malfeasance of the long-term Dignity Dayton board and clergy, as was I, and every other child and adult who presently attends worship at Living Beatitudes. As my 14-year-old son pointed out, after our equally heartbreaking discussion a few days into the crisis, everyone's a victim. I kept the situation from my 8-year-old daughter as long as I could, but when I had to go on television to speak for justice, I had to tell her why. And even in the most restrained and appropriate explanation, that included the essential truth that her father and I had unwittingly put her and her brother in danger by taking her to a church where there were 3 dangerous priests. One who hurt a child, and likely other children, and 2 who didn't care, and helped him cover this up from all the children and all the parents. This is far too young to learn such ugly truths about the lack of safety in the church and the world, a loss and violation of her innocence that can never be repaired. Our whole family has also lost a cherished memory of our time with the community and the warm good wishes of the people who loved and missed me after my amicable departure, until I exposed the grave betrayal by their other pastors. In a dynamic common in communities where a clergy person is exposed as a perpetrator, they are still in shock and trauma and disbelief, and most are dealing with the horrible news by blaming the whistleblowing priest rather than the abusing and colluding ones. Both children were especially disappointed by the loss of a cherished relationship with a long-term member we still love and respect, who was one of the few people not aware of the truth of Harsham's history. This person had become a close personal and family friend, and the kids had enjoyed celebration of holidays and thoughtful gifts at both our homes. The person initially supported my research and speaking out, but as the situation grew graver, could not face the pain of such a deep betrayal by a beloved community, and chose to cut off the personal and family friendship instead. During that Palm Sunday Mass, in which my own post-traumatic stress disorder was triggered by some truly vicious bullying from the board, I was also deeply concerned about another child who regularly attends Mass and social events at the community and is sometimes cared for by adults who are members. This family made a point of sitting next to me at Mass, which they had never done before, in a part of the church far from their normal place. Since Father Tom Stricker, who knew I would be attending and speaking out about the situation if the board refused to do the right thing, followed them into my pew, again an unprecedented seating choice in the 7 months in which I attended. I fear that he had instructed them to sit by me as a last-ditch attempt to silence me from speaking the terrible but necessary truth, appropriately of course, during the discussion period. As the mother of this child wept through my disclosure, and both parents avoided me during the sign of peace and after Mass as I attempted to hand out a letter to the community, I was immeasurably grieved at the trauma all 3 must have been suffering for their trust in people who should have protected them, and instead chose to expose them and our family and everyone else in the community to needless anguish. It is the suffering of the whole community in this process of the truth coming to light, never the fault of the one who speaks the truth, and always the fault of those who hid it under lies, that most truly emphasizes the implied lie of safety in Mark Matson's emphasis that Dignity Dayton is, quote, a largely adult community, close quote. Dignity Dayton and Dignity USA, please listen to my wise children whom you harmed so deeply. One kid is too many. Everyone's a victim. And please, I beg of you, live the Beatitudes. Tell the truth.